Thank you, Katie. We have a candle this morning, and so I was going to get the gentleman that was here last night and walked up to light the candle, if he would come up. Doug. There's no big deals. We didn't have it last night, but we have it this morning. I have the honor of introducing the speaker this morning. And this morning I was thinking about it because I've known him a really, really long time. And he's really very special to me. I met him when he was 11 years old. And it goes back to in McKinley Middle School. I went to pick my daughter up from a dance, and he and her were out on the dance floor. And since then, I'm not going to tell his story, but since then, he has been, let's see, I started thinking about it this morning, a boyfriend to my daughter, a friend to my son. He was in the youth group. I was the youth advisor. He's been an employee. He's been a sponsor to my son. So needless to say, he's very special to my family. And I love him very much. And Karl, I said, I don't want to tell his story. I'm going to let him tell it. He really works a good program. He does. Can you come up here and share with? I love you.
Well, shit. I'm Karl, and I'm an alcoholic. I almost got out of this last year. I was supposed to speak last year, but had a sponsee getting married, and I was in the wedding. So I had gotten a friend of mine to take my place. Apparently nobody got to come to the conference, so I want to say thank you to the committee, to George. You had a whole year to find somebody else. I want to say thank you to John. It's an honor and a privilege to come behind you. I go to a noon meeting pretty regularly that George and John go to, and there's like-minded people. One of my spiritual heroes used to talk about, there's kissing cousins and there's family in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's people that you just kind of make meetings with, you see them, and then there's like-minded people that are like family that you share your hopes, your dreams, your passions with. And John, you're one of those people, and I thank you for that. Mama Gail, probably going to be the best speaker all weekend. I can't wait to hear it. It's a privilege to share this weekend with you. And Amanda she'll clean up all our mess tonight. So, where I come from, I need to tell you this. I've been kept sober since June 12th of 1996. I have a home group. It's, don't thank me, it's God. I've done everything despite my best efforts to get drunk, and it just won't happen. I have a home group. It's the Wednesday night As Bill Sees It group. We meet on Wednesdays at 6:30. We are a problem-oriented group. I hear about a solution-oriented group, and sometimes in Alcoholics Anonymous you get this whole, that group's sick. That group doesn't have the solution. There's a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a mythical book. A lot of people talk about it, not a lot of people have it. But in the chapter, A Vision for You, there's a second reason why we have a meeting. In Bill's story, it says we meet frequently so that newcomers can find the fellowship they seek. And in A Vision for You, it says that we also set aside one night a week where the family and the newcomer could bring their problems. So my group is a problem-oriented group. We ask you to bring your problems. Unbeknownst to you, we're going to open up a piece of Alcoholics Anonymous literature and say, well, that sounds like powerlessness. Let's read what it says about powerlessness, and you're going to get a heavy dose of the 12 and 12, the book Alcoholics Anonymous, letters Bill Wilson wrote. So you'll walk out of there with a solution. I have a sponsor. He's a bully. He makes me objectively look at me. And, that's what I got to say about all that. That's my AA resume, It's been a very emotional 36 hours. This place, I was very fortunate enough. Jeannie's right. She 12-stepped me, and we'll get there eventually. But I got the privilege to come to the second ever Serenity by the Sea, back when they were at the church back there, and I had the privilege of meeting her father. I had the privilege of being in the hospital in October of '99 when he went home. I've had the privilege of seeing this family and what they do in Alcoholics Anonymous, which, believe it or not, as we talk, will shape how I live in Alcoholics Anonymous. Let's get to some drinking and some resentment. That's always the best stuff, I was born in Baton Rouge. I got both parents. They love me. There's no doubt about that. But my first real resentment was to my father. So I have a sister, and she's 9 years older than me. And when I was about 3 or 4, I started, my dad, he's got a PhD. He's a really smart guy. And prior to my birth, they were living high on the hog, man. They had lived in France, in Brazil, in Spain, in Yucatan, Mexico. And my dad was doing this survey work all over the world. And I remember distinctly sitting and seeing this slideshow. And, it's my sister. And she's running through some mythical jungle, standing on some pyramid in Mexico or something. And I'm just thinking, man, did I hit the life lottery or what? So I was born in 1980. And around 86, my dad incorporated a business. And right around that time, the country kind of took a nosedive. And so my dad just about lost everything. And so the first vacation I got was the Seagull Motel in Biloxi. I felt shafted. My sister got, these monkeys and stuff, and I got sewer water up to my knees for miles, and a broke-down putt-putt course, So I was pretty upset with my dad. And the reason is also, when you live in a home where your mother wasn't planning on working, so she gets a job for the state, which has her working pretty late, and dad's trying to find work, so he's working out of town most times, and, your sister's the one who's practically raising you the first 10 or so years of your life. There's not always a lot of stuff to go around. And so sometimes you got to go to school and, you don't have clothes. And so you get hand-me-downs, which aren't a problem if it's a hand-me-down of a boy to a boy. When you're wearing your sister's stonewashed Guess jeans and her pink Converse, you are not the most popular kid in school. So school was a struggle. I did not know how to make friends or influence people. And she, eventually she started dating a guy, and he was a real winner, and he liked to really show her how much he loved her, and needless to say, it was pretty brutal. It was pretty rough on her. It was pretty rough on my family, and sometimes it was rough on me. And, everybody's got horror stories. Everybody's got a tough childhood. People have their own little, dark and hairies that we keep in the corner and we don't want to let people know about. I'm no better. I'm no worse. But I wouldn't have wished that on my worst enemy. And eventually he got arrested, and some things went down, and I was so happy that the cops were going to take this guy away. I had stepped in between him and my sister. My family got called. He had a restraining order. It was a big ordeal. And right after he was taken, these other people showed up, and they had this little placard, kind of like this. And it was a person of interest with the child services. And they wanted to speak to my family about the unfit home they had created for a 9-year-old. And so my second resentment, which was to humanity, because, I believe there's a lot of things that we find out in inventory that doesn't condone what people did. Definitely that dude should have been brought behind somewhere and horsewhipped. But the biggest sin of all was that I couldn't understand why they wanted to take me from my family, why I had to go see these neurologists, why I had to have I was diagnosed a lot of stuff when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm not even here to get into the medical debate or whatever. I've resigned from that debating society. I'm not a doctor, so if you have one, go see him. But I can tell you this, everything that I exhibited prior to ever taking a drink was untreated alcoholism. I was the kind of alcoholic who was waiting for alcohol. And alcohol saved my life. So I was pretty upset, and I didn't trust people. I was the kind of person who came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and when I got here, I was like a dog backed in a corner. I didn't want you touching me. I didn't want to hug you. I was very angry. I was moving 1,000,000 miles a minute. I mean, I was the kid, chewing crayons, and I had some issues. So eventually I met this kid in my neighborhood, and he was wearing his sister's jeans, so I thought we could pal around. And he had an older sister, and clearly, because he was wearing her jeans, and she said, hey, let's go back to Karl's house. His dad, he's got a wet bar. And I'm 9 or 10 years old, and sounded like a good idea. And she was older, so I wanted to impress her. I don't know at 10 what I was, come check out my tree house, but, so, we get over there, and I was telling John after his talk last night, like, you want to talk about a real alcoholic, when somebody brings up spiced rum and you just go, yes. Because Jamaican Myers rum was the first thing I ever drank. I had seen the movie Cocktail with my sister, and so I was going to really impress this older girl. And I was going to make a screwdriver. So I got orange juice and rum. Needless to say, so she took a hit, and he took a hit, and I took a hit, and it went around, and something amazing happened. Unlike a lot of people I've heard tell their story. A lot of people I've heard tell their story say they got 6 foot tall, and bulletproof, and good looking, and quick-witted, and none of that happened. I was pasty white and freckly and still wearing my sister's jeans. And I looked y'all all in the eye and gave you the middle finger. I was okay. I could have chased that feeling for the rest of my life. If I could sit here, look you in the eye today. One of a piece in our book talks about being alone at perfect peace and ease. And I got that, man. I was okay. I knew that Karl would be okay. And I wanted that as much as possible. Now look, at 9 or 10 years old, they were carding me. I wasn't able to make it into the bar. So basically it amounted to the first couple of years, my buddy Wes, he'd come over, he'd steal the Playboys from his stepdad and the smokes, and I'd go steal the liquor, and we'd go pitch a tent in the backyard, get drunk and throw up, pass out. And we did that as much as possible. And, eventually I got into, middle school and whatnot, and, kids were smoking pot. I did drugs. I'll say that. I did. I did a copious amount of drugs. I'll say this and leave it at that. I don't know that I'm a drug addict. It's just me. Because I will say that if you stick me somewhere for 30 days and pump me full of something, I'm probably going to continue to do it. But I remember one time, here's a little story. I remember one time a friend of mine, He lived downstairs in a duplex from another friend of ours who had gotten to know, because that's what we do, right? It's like this radar. We find our own. We find each other. You drink? Okay. You drink? Cool. And his dad was a big crack addict, and that was like the epitome at the time where I was like, if you smoke crack, man, look, that's a level I can't, and I had gotten real bad on cocaine for about 5 months or 6 months. And I remember I'd gotten so lit up on this stuff and it started to really dominate my life that guy's crack pipe started looking interesting. Contempt prior to investigation, And at that moment, I was like, I need to stop doing cocaine. But drinking was an equation I could never figure out. I tried drinking on the weekends. It's South Louisiana. It's so funny. I've spoken all over the country, and I've heard people go, you mean to tell me y'all drink like... I'm like, look, dude, we drink. This is what we do. If there's a funeral, we drink. If there's a wedding, we drink. If there's a football game, we drink. If it's a day that ends in Y, we drink. And it's acceptable. It's almost a rite of passage. The problem is I would want to drink to watch the LSU game, hang out with my buddies. But see, Wednesday, I'm in some room with some girl whose name I don't know doing some substance, and I can't even pronounce the name of it. And that wasn't the intended target. So, I'm with these kids, and I'm, smoking pot and drinking and whatever. And things start going downhill pretty quick for me. I had an accelerated ism, I guess you could say. I don't know. When you're a kid who doesn't fit in real well wearing your sister's jeans, you find ways to make money. So I tried to go into business. I had a corporate model presented to me and how to climb that ladder of achievement. So, one of my favorite stories is the first time I went out kind of to do some market research. I was to sit in the back of a truck while a friend of mine exchanged goods and services for, some money. And a fight broke out, and then gunshots. And so me and my buddy Wes are running down. We're running. And he's like, "Man, this is bad." I'm like, "Yeah, this has got to stop." He's like, "Yeah, we're going to get killed." I'm like, "Yeah, we got to get a gun." That's the kind of thinking I had. It never slowed down and said we should stop doing this. Couple of things about where I later on in sobriety figured out what was so different about my drinking. My sister, she was smart. She got out. She left. She went to Colorado, went to college, got a degree, came back, married, had some kids. My dad loves Mexican food. So for his birthday, we'll go out. We'll have some Mexican food, and she'll get a margarita, one of those big fish. It's really not that big, but it's big. When you see it, you're like, God, that thing's huge. Big old rock salt and everything. And she's, drinking and enjoying herself, and the waiter will come by and he'll say, "Ma'am, how was it?" And she'll say, "It was good." And he'll say, "Oh, okay, would you like another?" And she'll say, "Sure." And then out of nowhere, she goes, "Wait, I've changed my mind." On command, she can implement a psychic change, Like a good drinker, I'm assuming this is for me. And I watched her do that. She can drink with impunity. She's not punished when she drinks. I say I want to enjoy myself, and instead of drinking some sort of mixed drink, highball, or liquor, I'll just have a couple of beers. 32-ounce Colt 45, 78 cents a piece, sure, but, I'm just going to have a couple of beers. And my intention is to do exactly what I witnessed my sister do, and I can't do that. I somehow, some way, talk myself into it. The biggest problem is that when I have one, I have two. I always have the second one. That's the problem. So therefore, I shouldn't have the first one. But I can't not have the first one. My sister, she was getting married. I had just spent 3 days in a hospital. It's a place called Meadowood. It's not even around anymore. Yeah. That was fun times. When you wake up in the group room and you're going, what's for breakfast? You think you're back home or something. And some lady comes in and she's slapping your arm and tying a tourniquet. And she's like, vitals. It's the Twilight Zone. So I get out. I knuckle together about almost a month of sobriety. And my sister's getting married. And so, we're having the rehearsal dinner. And the thought is okay, sure, Karl's within arm's reach. Have a couple glasses of champagne. And I have a couple of glasses of champagne. I go to bed, no problem. Everything's wonderful. I wake up the next morning. I'm the ring bearer. I'm one of the groomsmen, so I'm in this tux, and I'm sweating, I'm shaky. Palms are greased, It's my big sister. This is my best friend. This girl and I have been through more than I would care to share from any podium to any individual. She is my best friend. She was like my mother, okay? And I feel like I'm about to lose her. And so I go over to the little reception area, and I said, let me get a whiskey sour. My dad used to drink those, and I like the cherry, right? That's why I drank it, because I like the cherry. So I have a whiskey sour, and I have another whiskey sour. And this is right around the time when Abita came out with Purple Haze. And I was like, yeah, Purple Haze all in your, yeah, let's go, all right. And, it's like what seems to be like 30 minutes can be like 4 hours when I drink. I don't know if that happens to y'all. I don't know that I'm a blackout drinker, but I don't know that I'm a conscious drinker. They call it lucid intervals. So, I'm sitting here and I'm behind this car, heaving. And the best man comes up to me and he says, what are you doing? And clearly, you see I'm dealing with something. And he's, the procession has started. There's bridesmaids going down the aisle. Oh. So with my bow tie and my cummerbund coming undone, and there's this 25-pound Greek column that this pillow with these 2 rings is going to sit on, and here I come, and I'm running down the aisle, and boom, and it broke in front of everybody. I made this huge scene in front of my family. And we still have that family photo. It's interesting. It's not exactly a Hallmark material, but so they say I do, and they dance, and she dances with Dad, and he dances with his mom and his grandma, and money dance, all that. She goes and change. They go and change. They go to sign the license and all that, and they're coming back for the big party and all that. And she catches me, and I'm in the corner, and I got my head in my hands. And she looks at me, and she goes, why? You knew where you had to be. You knew what you had to do. Just hit your mark. That's all you got to do. You knew exactly what you had to do, and you couldn't do it. Why? This one day, why? I said, I don't know. And for the next 18 months, I sat there and thought it was probably that whiskey sour. And later I read in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in the doctor's opinion, it talks about, that this isn't something about trying to escape. This is something beyond my mental control. That I've had certain things, certain events, functions that were going to be held on a certain date favorably to me. I knew where I had to be and what I had to do. And I would take a drink a day or so prior. And that important appointment or event or whatever, I wouldn't show up. And that's when I understood that, the alcohol that landed me in the hospital for 3 days, the narcotics that had me picked up by the police and in front of a judge, looking at juvenile court, the things that had me kicked out of schools, those were never the problem. Somewhere a week before, a month before, somewhere I had tried on my own volition, my own willpower, to try to stop. And somewhere in there, I would talk myself into having a drink. Now, around that in those couple of years, I was going to this middle school, and I met Jeannie's daughter, and yes, we went to a winter formal, and it was cute. She said she wasn't going to tell that story. Don't worry, I will take it through the 4-column process, find out where I'm at fault for this resentment. I will find you later and make it right. You evil, evil, wicked person. So, and what happened is I ended up getting really close to her oldest son, and we started palling around, and it was really messed up, man. So, what would happen is he would invite me to stay the night, and she'd invite some girlfriend of hers to stay the night, and we'd sneak out, go smoke cigarettes or whatever, But and then they would want to go to church, which was weird. I'm an oddity. I grew up in South Louisiana and was not taken to church. My parents weren't very spiritual, religious, had any sort of... My dad has a PhD in anthropology. I mean, I'm sitting here getting told why Gilgamesh and Noah are the same story and they're in 2 different spiritual texts. And I'm 8, and I want to play with G.I. Joes. But this is what was getting hammered to me over and over and over. So I had a lot of real screwed up thinking when it came to God. But I would go, and I'd go to church, and I tried, I liked the little youth group, we'd play basketball, we'd hang out, we could go skateboard, whatever. But it was weird because they would start talking about this relationship with this thing that I just didn't have. And I tried it. I was faking it till I was making it, and it never took. And then around, a couple of years going there, we were there and something happened. I forget what exactly, but there was an altar call at the church, and I felt this force push me right up. And I went up, and they baptized me, and they laid hands on me, and they prayed, and I became a member of the church, and it was this amazing, overwhelming feeling, and I believe to this day that was the first time I consciously was aware of the presence of God. And later that weekend, I ran into Wes, and I told him, I said, this is it. We're going to go to church. We're going to read the Bible. We're going to stop drinking, stop doing drugs. Within a couple hours of talking, we agreed, go to church, read the Bible, just drink beer and smoke pot. Frothy. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. It was an amazing experience. It was an amazing feeling, but it didn't have depth and weight. It didn't have y'all. Because I was going into that church drunk and high sometimes. I was hanging out with this youth group and sneaking off and going. So the Cortana group met at that church. When I got sober, I got brought to the Cortana group, and I was like, I smoked pot on that roof. Man. I was drunk one time when they had a capture the flag event, and I threw up in that bush. Because I couldn't walk into that church and go, hey man, this is what I'm thinking. I'm plotting murder. I'm plotting suicide. In fact, suicide's a waste of time because it's a waste of a bullet. I want to take somebody with me. Life is unbearable. And to top it all off, I can't get drunk enough. And they're telling me I need to be sober, but I don't know if they're like me because being sober hurts. It's uncomfortable. I was one of those people that how are you was a deep question. So how am I? How much time you got? How are you feeling? Everything. All the time. My mom had a heart attack, and this is one of the last times me and my dad really talked for about the last year or so, my drinking. He was out working somewhere. My sister was out, and it was just me and my mom. She had this heart attack, and I drove her to the hospital, and it was the first time I actually prayed to God. I said, God, you let my mother live, because I'm a mama's boy, man. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, and I hope I don't, touch any feelings here, but all the tough guys in the room, I get it, man. I totally get it. But we're all mama's boys. We're full of fear. We're just giant little 8-year-olds, Because that's the thing. You could put me in the ring with Mike Tyson. I'm not scared. He's not going to do much more than anything's ever been done to me anyways. I skinned my knee. I'm like, Mama, And there she was, my hero, and she wasn't doing well. And I prayed to God. I said, you let her live, I'll stop. I guess he did his thing. I don't know. She lived. I didn't stop. And my dad showed up and he said, you've acted like a real man. I'm really proud of you. You took care of your mother and all that. And I just looked at him and I said, you know what? You weren't here when your daughter was getting taken advantage of and treated the way she was. And you weren't here when I got in the middle of that guy and her. And you weren't here when your wife just had a triple bypass. Sorry, bub, we don't need you. I don't need you. One of the last things we really said to each other was after I got arrested, and I said, well, at least I'm not going to, juvie at the moment. And he said, I've done everything. His father died when he was 4, so he really came from nothing. And he said, I've done everything to make my last name mean something, and you've totally sullied it. You've destroyed my last name. And he had his hands on me. And I had stolen my dad's gun at one point because business had gotten a little violent. And I told him, I said, if you ever touch me again, I'll kill you. I don't need you. I don't love you. You've never been here for me. And, my birthday's December 20th, and I ended up getting drunk, clearly. And I kind of come to on Christmas Day, and I'm like, oh, it's Christmas, Probably should go home. And I show up over at my parents' house, and my key didn't work. And my mom, she was like, your probation officer's looking for you, and it's probably best if you go. And I saw the saddest yet happiest scene I've ever seen in my entire life. I saw a family getting ready for Christmas dinner. Everybody was there. There was the tree, and the table was set, and there was a place for everybody but me. And they were happy because I wasn't there. And that was tough. That was a tough awakening. And on Christmas of 1995, I found an azalea bush behind my neighbor's house. And that became my address for a short period of time. And I couch hopped and I moved around. Towards the end of it, I'm hanging out with this bum named Thomas who lives under the Perkins Road overpass in Baton Rouge. I'd ride his handlebars. We'd go to Baton Rouge Recyclery. My buddy Wes couldn't scrounge up enough money for anything significant. We're running the streets, terrorizing. A good day was like really good wine, like Banana Red, Mad Dog 2020, Cisco, Thunderbird. Top shelf stuff. It's like the best. Like, what kind of alcoholic you're dealing with when their puke is kind of rainbow colored. It's like, you're like, oh yeah, you like the wine, don't you? And I remember around May of 96, I was like, I'm dying. I need help. I hadn't been to school. I hadn't done anything. It's so funny. If you read in Bill's story, and I always point this out to my guys, I love it. He has that passage where he's like, I became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. Bathtub gin, often 2 bottles a day or 3 were often routine. He had to, if he netted any money, it would go to his, various bars and delicatessens. He's shaking violently, yada, yada. And, when my dad would see that, or if a normal, drinker sees that, they immediately just go, dude, death is next. Like, if that's where you're living, that's it. It can't, that is as low as you can get. You are physically addicted. You are physically mangled by alcohol. And the first line of the very next paragraph says, gradually things got worse. It's like, hold my beer, I'll show you. So this church, they go to these retreats, right? And this family was like, yeah, you should come. I'd been before. Again, I'd tried the church thing. I found it a little daunting. But I went. And I did what we should do, I was hanging out with them. I'm putting some food in my stomach. I got my weight up, got some money back in my pocket. I'm getting back to business. And we're there in June 12th, 1996. That girl that I was at that winter formal with, she starts bugging me. Hey, why don't we, smoke a little, do a little. I had to look at her, and I was like, let me tell you something. Not this is a dressed up trash can, but this is not teenage angst. This is not rebellion. So my grandfather drank himself to death. I was at his hospital when he stroked and they pulled the plug. My mom's brother died in a drunk driving accident. I'll let you figure out who the drunk driver was. My grandfather's two brothers, one was shot outside of a bar and one got run over outside of a bar. Excuse me, the one that wasn't shot outside of a bar, he was at a bar looking for somebody and he got shot going back to his house. The other one was run out. If you're a man in my mom's family, you die of alcoholism. So I'm looking at this girl and I'm like, look, this isn't for fun. This isn't, let's be, rebellious. It's like, this is the train, man. And she kept bugging me, and misery loves company. So we did our thing. And again, what was like 30 minutes, really a couple hours, we had hiked up this trail. And she had gone back down. And I came back down, and it was utter chaos. It was pandemonium. And there was her brother, and there was Miss Jeannie, and things weren't looking good. I didn't know where she was at. And Jeannie said, you should come in here. Don't worry about Katie. I didn't know if she was dying. I didn't know what had happened. But I knew, I had this sinking feeling that this was it. Like I had done the unthinkable. I didn't know, By the time I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was very young, but by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had friends that were dying. Within 2 years of being in Alcoholics Anonymous, I had two running buddies that I ran with regularly that are now in Angola for life. One of them had a promising wrestling career. These were the people I ran with. I didn't make it long enough to go to bars and things, and I wish I did. I wish I would have that experience. Maybe more people would relate. But I was into much more criminal activity. I got involved in some things that just weren't savory, and people suffered. And I was sitting in that room, and Jeannie, said, "Don't worry about Katie. You need to come in here." And when you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, well, you're supposed to be in juvie. You're supposed to be probably locked up somewhere. You've been into several hospitals. I just kind of thinking like, all right, let's go. And it's been a tough weekend. It says that if an ex-problem drinker who is armed with the facts about him or herself and has found this solution and is properly armed with the facts about him or herself can genuinely win the confidence of another alcoholic in just a few hours. And she sat down, and I had been told that I had dissociative disorder. I had been told I had borderline personality disorder. I was ADD, ADHD. I was all sorts of things. And this was the first person who sat across from me and said, "I know why you did what you did." And I looked at her and I said, "You're like a mother who's married and got 3 kids. I'm some charity case. Like, I get it. I make you feel good, You don't know me. You don't understand why I am the way I am. I don't understand why I am the way I am. I stay up at night preparing responses for conversations I haven't had yet with people I haven't met yet. Can you match those mental inconsistencies?" And she said, I used to drink like this. And me and my husband were in this situation. And our family and our home was split up. And she started telling me about her. So she told me about me. It was the first time ever one alcoholic had sat down with me and told me their story and used language in a way I could never argue with. And that was June 12th of 1996. I haven't had a drink since because of that. I believe exactly because if one alcoholic can talk to another alcoholic, sharing experience, strength, and hope, that's when recovery begins. So I was like, okay. She called herself an alcoholic. I said, well, it's all over me. I've got it. She goes, I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, how much does it cost? I didn't know. By the way, I've told my story plenty of times, and I always forget to tell people. People are like, so whatever happened to Katie? She's married, she's doing well, she's alive, happy, and healthy. Just want to clear that up. People have literally, they're like, well, whatever happened to her? I always want to add to the story. I'm like, oh, she died tragically. It was bad. No, she's doing well. She's doing great. So the next day is my parents' wedding anniversary. So Jeannie gets on the phone with my family, and then I get on the phone with them, and hey, Mom, Dad, happy anniversary. I don't know if you've noticed, I got a bit of a drinking problem. So we end up riding this bus back for 2 days, and I'm hating every minute of it. I'm emotionally, physically, mentally sick and drained, and I don't want to be there. I want to stop drinking. I don't know if this thing's going to... I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and really, I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous came to me. And the crazy thing is it wasn't that I thought Alcoholics Anonymous would work. It was one thing I hadn't tried so far, and I figured, like everything else, it wouldn't eventually work. And so... I get home, and apparently this guy, this Ronnie character, was kind of, back then they appointed you a sponsor. They're like, this is going to be your sponsor. Okay. I used to skateboard. So I'm thinking, cool, he's going to buy me clothes and get me a deal. He bought me cigarettes. And, I would go to that church sometimes, and George would be, making a jambalaya. This is before I ever came to... And so, all of a sudden, I'm going, and I'm hanging out with Jeannie and her husband, Charlie, and, here's George, and here's Ronnie and Patricia, and I'm like, I've seen these people. They were, waiting, man. I was like, they've been waiting this whole time. They knew it. Bastards. And, I got into activity. Basically what I did was I understood that I was powerless over alcohol. I knew that when I took a drink, I could not take a second drink. And so I got into activity. Man, I was going to every club dance there was. I was going to I came to Grand Isle. I was doing all these things. I was I was gonna play spades all night. We'd play canasta. I'd hang out. I'd go everywhere there was AA. My first convention, you want to talk about a bad trip? Get sober less than 30 days and get taken to the Louisiana State Convention. Back then it was at the Belmont. And there's 1,500 people. And half of them have cowboy hats and the other half have on leather chaps. And I'm sure a fight is about to break out. And here are these grown men running, oh man, it's been so long since I've seen you. Oh, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. This isn't right, and I ended up going to Lacey Paw, the Louisiana State Conference of Young People in Alcoholics Anonymous, because, sorry guys, I was a young person, don't hold it against me. People say, oh, well, that's not AA. I'm like, well, GSO's never sent a check back, so, figure that one out. I was going, because I'm a shaker and a mover as an alcoholic. I got to be doing something, because sitting here trying to contemplate how I am is a task. And so I was about almost 6 months dry, and one of my best buds had come into Alcoholics Anonymous. And he had a mother of his child, almost newborn. He had, been unfaithful to her. She found out. They had a big fight, and she asked him to leave. And what he didn't know how to do was to say, you know what, I was wrong for these actions, and I shouldn't have done them. And this is what I'm doing to correct it. And if there's anything else I can do to make it right, please let me know. He didn't know how to do that, so he took a drink. He ended up stealing a car and running from the police. And right around the corner of Jefferson and Lobdell, there's a huge curve. And he took a telephone pole out. And I was a pallbearer at his funeral. And I remember trying to figure out why he did that. Why did he do that? So I'm sitting there, and my sponsor at the time, Ronnie, I said, if he knew what was going to happen, if we all understand this powerlessness gig, why would he take a drink? It makes no sense whatsoever. Like death came from this. And he looked at me and he said something just magical. So simple. He said, do you think he woke up and decided to die from alcoholism? My life in an instant had become unmanageable. I realized that there was never going to be me versus it. If it's me versus it, I lose. I have but two alternatives. Either go on to the bitter end or accept spiritual help. If it's go on to the bitter end, accept spiritual help, or her, I promise you which one I'm taking. Go on to the bitter end, accept spiritual help, or more money? So I realized that my life had become unmanageable. And so had Joey's, and that's why he did what he did. So I said, all right, well, let's work those steps. And my sponsor did the most intimate thing that you can do, I personally believe. And thank God it happened. He sat with me, and we went from the beginning of the book, and we just read and did what it said to do. What a novel concept. We didn't theorize, we didn't speculate. We just did what it said to do. And I got sober, I really got sober. I started to have some real life-changing events. Got back in school, went to college for a little while, moved in with Jeannie and Charlie's oldest son for a little while. And, there were days where I woke up and I didn't know why I was here. I'd tried to run away a couple times. I was trying to figure out what my place was in Alcoholics Anonymous, because sometimes, we look at people and they get sober and we pat them on the head and we go, that's just cute. That's wonderful. We're glad you're here. Especially if you're a young person. Sometimes we look at young people and we say, well, they're young. We're taking care of AA. In the future, they can take care of AA. And the problem is it's not the future, it's now, it's the present. So obviously those young people are the present right now. And so, they could also be GSRs or DCMs, members of a home group, active in their area. So, to fill my time, I met her. And, I met this girl, boy meets girl in AA campus. She was sober a couple years. I was sober about 4 or 5 years, and I don't know, she was it. She had the same ideals I had at the time. And we got together, and we were together about almost 2 years, and we were going to get married. And I got a ring, and we got engaged. I had a really great career going on at the time. I was in sales as well. I've always kind of been in sales, so it just made sense. Things were good. And then right about the time save-a-dates are going out, she got drunk. It's okay. Love will conquer all, right? She put together about a year. She got drunk again. And basically, within the next 2.5 to 3 years, I ended up living with a practicing alcoholic. She could not drink. I want to, my sponsor at the time, who's here this weekend, and I love him for it, and I'm so glad he came. He saw a lot of my rough edges in this relationship. She was beyond Karl's aid, and I didn't know it, but I was trying. And basically by about Thursday, the itch would come on, and it was, a lot of verbal, just terrible stuff on both ends. And so by Friday, it was, I'm leaving you, I'm never coming back. And, I had been trained because by Monday, I would get the phone call of like, I love you, I want to make it. So, she'd leave, and I'd be like, all right, bye. I'll still be at the house on Monday. And I went to a conference in October in Arkansas, and I came home, and she really was gone. She took everything. Dress, ring, furniture. And I spent the next couple of months not working, not bathing, giving up, and I hated y'all because y'all lied. Y'all had. I did what y'all said to do. I sponsored. I went to meetings. I got involved in service. I worked steps, made amends, got involved in my family. Y'all had happy lives, and I'm happy for y'all, but I didn't. So screw y'all. And on my birthday, at about 9.5 years sober, I couldn't stand or bear the thought of being sober anymore. And I went back to that wet bar and grabbed a bottle of Jamaican Myers rum because, we're going to go back to the old faithful. And there's a line in our book that says he couldn't drink even if he would. And that's one of the most miserable places you can be as an alcoholic, when you want to drink and can't. I knew I could rob a bank. I knew I could go murder a small village. I could go pull off a really big heist. Whatever I could go do. Some of the most craziest stuff I could go do, and the craziest thing I could do was take a drink. I knew that. It was like the most sobering, sane thought, and it was the most painful one. So then I broke into Dad's gun cabinet, and here comes my dad, because he heard the gun cabinet break open. He comes sliding in his tighty whities, which should have been enough to straighten me up right there, and he just shows up, and he says, what's wrong? And I said, I don't want to live, and I don't want to die. So I took a vacation for 10 days, and I went to St. Clair's Resort Health and Spa, and I ate really good meatloaf and got great group therapy, and I cursed God the whole time. I hadn't heard the voice of God in quite a while. And I had some experiences in there that made me want to give God another try, but I was still angry. From about year 10 to about year 15, I hated God. I hated AA. I hated every one of you. And I let you know it. I became the kind of person who you couldn't trust. I became the kind of person who, without a drink, was unfaithful, unreliable. I started gambling. I was taking checks from my family. I was so angry. Because you know what? We spend a lot of spiritual fluff in AA. We do. You ever met the people who say, well, there's no such thing as a bad day, only bad moments? Was anybody here for the flood a couple years ago? Was that a bad moment? Certain trials and low spots. Certain. My purpose, my whole purpose here is to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life. The only way I know how to do that is through work and self-sacrifice for others. And the reason why I do that is because if I don't, I will not survive these certain trials and low spots. My mom is going to die eventually. Like, that's a certainty. I cannot outrun it. And if you walk up to me and tell me there's no such thing as a bad day, I will throat punch you. I will make amends later, but I'll be awfully angry. I was angry for a long time. And look, man, if you're wondering, and I'll say this about the fellowship, it may sting a little bit, but hey, dude, look, if you want to know how you're doing, go ask the fellowship. They'll let you know. I had a lot of friends in AA. You know, the realm of the spirit all of a sudden got real exclusive. But eventually I ended up in a place where I just couldn't live like that anymore. I didn't want to be that kind of person in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't want to be that kind of person in life. I blame my second sponsor because he moved to Florida, and he left me kind of hanging. And I got an idiot for a sponsor for a number of years, myself. And eventually I got a new sponsor. And this guy, Urban, I've been knowing him since I got sober, and he's a mover and a shaker like me. And I just looked at him and I said, you know what? I'm dying in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I just want to start at the beginning. And he said in his big, good old Thibodeau coon-ass voice, well, babe, let's go ahead. We'll start at the preface and we'll go from there. And I said, what do I do, man? I'm unemployable. He says, become employable. So I get a job at this butcher's mart, this little marketplace. And, at the time when I was in my sales position, I was making like $60,000 a year at one point. I had my name on an office door. I wore suits like this. And now I'm making $8 an hour cutting chicken. I'm like, we're getting the gift now, ain't we? Them promises, though, And you know what happened when I was in that nut house at 9.5 years sober? The one voice I distinctly remember hearing was, you know what, God? I don't care, man, but make this pain stop. If you're even really there, make it stop. And I heard this voice that said, hey, what if? What if your whole life you don't end up married, you don't end up with kids? By the way, I'm the only boy, I'm the namesake. You don't end up with any major career, no statues erected in your name, there's no major contribution to society, but you live in a studio apartment making minimum wage, and you spend your life helping my kids. Is that enough? So when I moved into my studio apartment, making $8 an hour, I had drunks running in and out of there. I was in some terrible relationships in the in-between time. I was trying to, fix it still. But, going through that book again and trying to sweep away the old ideas I had this real beef with God, And one of my spiritual heroes once said that when we're crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we cannot postpone or evade. We have to fearlessly face the proposition. And he says there's 4 questions there. God is either everything or else he's nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? And I couldn't tell you at that time that God was everything. I couldn't. There was no way. But I could tell you God is. And for somebody like me at that moment, so agnostic, it was the biggest leap of faith. I got free at step 2, in sobriety. You don't have a spiritual awakening at step 12. It just says that as the result of these steps, you should have had a spiritual awakening. If it takes place at step 12 for you, that's okay. But the consciousness of my belief came to me. It told me that if I was able to sweep away prejudice, all my old ideas. I was in this relationship with this girl. Her grandma died. She went to Arizona for the funeral. She came back with major Catholic guilt. She said, look, if we're going to do this, we're going to get married in the Catholic Church. We're going to baptize our kid Catholic. I said, we will not. Of course, the relationship ended, whatever. But I had to look at that prejudice, and through inventory, I had to figure out why I got so upset. My sponsor said, why don't you go find out? So I started meeting with this guy, Father Paul, over at St. Joseph's Cathedral in downtown Baton Rouge. He's become one of my heroes. He dispelled a lot of stuff that I had. We got to the 3rd step and we said that prayer. And I want to say this. The 3rd step prayer is still today one of my favorite prayers ever written in the history of man. Because it's what I believe I've always wanted to tell God and my fellow man and never knew how to say. I mean, it's so carte blanche, such a blank contract. Like, if you really think about it, if I'm looking at you and I say, Jeannie, I offer myself to you. You can have me to build with me and do with me as you would. Here I am, right, wrong, or indifferent. Because I'm hoping in this, you'll help relieve me of the bondage of self. If I can be of service to you, I'll be relieved of that. And maybe we'll take away my difficulties. Because victory over them, when people see what we're doing together, they're going to bear witness. They're going to see. They're going to be able to tell the story of power, love, and way of life. I didn't know how to walk up to a kid when I was in kindergarten and go, can we do that? Can we just be useful to each other? No, you played one part, what I needed you to play. I'm a weirdo. I don't pray to God to keep me sober. If you're doing it, don't stop it. I'm not here to say don't do it. But I'm a weirdo. It never tells me to pray to God to keep me sober. See, I took the third step. So in my belief, if I get drunk, it's God's fault. I mean, my drinking and my life is in his hands. My business is how I treat his kids now. That's where I got to be. I don't believe I have a God-shaped hole. I never was missing God. God was with me the whole time. Big spiritual truth, y'all. Where I am, God is. No matter what. If I get an A on the test, God doesn't move any closer. And if I get an F, God doesn't move any further away. The guys, they win the championship. My grand sponsor, he put me on this one. We were watching the national championship, and the guy had won the Heisman. They won the name. It's like, how do you feel? He's like, well, I want to thank God. God made this possible. And he looked at me and he says, I just can't stand that. I said, well, it's I get it, but it's what you're supposed to say, right? You thank God and all that. He goes, I guess God hated the other team. Because he said when he was 2 years sober and his daughter drowned in his pool, and he was in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and people kept saying, well, thank God my child. Thank God my house didn't flood. I guess everybody whose house did flood got screwed by God, right? I can't do business with a God like that. God's with me no matter where I go, no matter what. It's obscured. Sometimes it's like a hose. There's a kink, That power, which is with me, is obscured by calamity, my own chaos, my own pomp, my own vanity, my ego thinking I know best, my worship of other things. But in some form or other, that power's always been with me. And if I'm able to move away those old ideas, sweep away those prejudices, if I can think honestly, really try to experience what's happening to me and really see what it's really about, and search diligently within myself, go look inside and see how that matches up to my ideals. Maybe what you're telling me or maybe what I'm experiencing doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem like it's really made for me. But let me just for a moment try to experience it. If it doesn't match up, it's okay. But if I can live a life like that, then I can join y'all on the broad highway. And with this attitude, I cannot fail. It's one of my favorite promises. You cannot fail, no matter what. Death of family, bankruptcy, divorce, tragedy, no matter what, you cannot fail. Because where you are, God is. Never left. We did inventory. I found out it was y'all's fault. Because I had been making it y'all's fault. I had to let y'all off the hook, man. And I had to get honest about me. I had to make some things right, My dad called me up. He said, I'm getting old. I said, yeah. He says, I can't do this forever. Would you want to come work with me? I grew up in my dad's business. It's something I've always known. But I never got a degree. College wasn't my thing. Like, look, if I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree in something that doesn't pay too well, like philosophy. I mean, what do you do with that? Sit at a coffee shop and think deeply. Doesn't pay real well. But I started working for Dad. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, my sister told me, don't ever come around her or kids again. I was dealing in an illegal activity. People were shooting guns. I was untrustworthy. My nephew graduated from MIT, one of the most prestigious technical colleges in the world. I do say that to impress you. He's my nephew. I got tasked by my sister to put on that trip because we drove up there. My niece was driving back from Memphis College of Art, one of the most prestigious art colleges in the country. I say that as well to impress you. That's my niece. She flipped her car 3 times driving back. My sister called me, said, can you drive up with me and go to the hospital? And then she called me a couple weeks later and said, hey, I need like you as a reference and stuff like that, and I need some of your information. And I said, for what? She goes, well, I've got to do like some credit stuff. I got to buy her another car. Credit, huh? Dad gave me a company credit card. I got to sign payroll next week when him and Mom go out of the country. We're meeting with a lawyer. We've been setting up this new corporate conglomerate between me and a couple other people at work to basically take over. I've seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their family and communities. A vital place. I just wanted a key to the house. I just wanted to come over for Christmas dinner. The story went from, oh shit, here comes Karl, to, oh shit, where's Karl? It's not the same without me. Me and my sister never did get to go to Disney together. Last November, me and Courtney, hey Courtney, wave, there she is. And Aubrey, we went with my sister, my brother-in-law, my nephew, and my nieces, and we went to Disney together. And my sister, 46 years old, me 36, and we're sitting there elbowing each other because there's Cinderella's palace, you know. The girls are like loving it. We're like kicking them out, like, you don't understand. Got to go do the Hulk ride, you know. We'll wrap this up real quick. Talk about some time. I used to sneak a girl out of her house, right? Lose touch with her. I get sober. She doesn't. Eventually, I'm sitting in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. She walks in. She's got this thing with her. And she kind of waved it around in front of me to reel me in. See, I got this beautiful kid. And I fell in love with her, and I fell in love with this child. I would be hanging out at Jeannie and Charlie's house, and here's how it would go. I'd show up. I wouldn't call. I'd show up. They'd open the door. They'd be having family dinner. Brandon would be talking about wrestling. Katie would be talking about school. Alan's being Alan. You know, what about you, Karl? I'm going on 60 days. I want to murder the world, and I'm chewing my knuckles off. Pass the potatoes. And they would invite me and all my craziness in. They were all-inclusive, never exclusive. My house today is like that. I tell my guys, I say, look, here's the deal, dude. The only time to meet is now. It's the only time we got. So don't call me. You don't need an invite. Just show up. And they show up. And we sit on the porch and we smoke cigarettes and we talk. My house is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive, just like the way I try to live my life. This kid, man, let me tell you about this kid. I'm going down the street right after the flood. I'm going to go pick up my baby niece and get her off my sister's hands. I'll put Aubrey in the back of the truck. I go out of the neighborhood the same way I always go out. And of course I turn out and there's the Kentwood bottle guy. And he's blocking the road. And I'm like, this mother... And she's like, he's blocking the road. I'm like, right? She's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, cosign. Yeah, you got my back. Justify. Right, rationalize. I got an 8-year-old who's got my back. I love you, James. These are the good old days. Years from now, we'll all be dust, but people will be talking about us. Because like John said, this ain't about me getting a message. I got the message almost 22 years ago. But there's somebody, maybe a 9-year-old right now, that may one day need this, and I want to make sure it's here. And I thank y'all for everything y'all did to make sure this thing was here when I got here, because a snot-nosed 15-year-old punk on the street did not deserve God's grace. So I thank y'all and I love y'all. Thank you. Thank you for this weekend.